The number one thing I want to talk about today is God makes a habit of choosing insignificant people to do significant things. God doesn't pick typically royal blood or the sharpest people, the smartest people, the best looking people. He tends to choose sometimes ordinary, run-of-the-mill type people. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 25, Paul says this. He said, "This foolish plan of God is wiser than the wisest of human plans. And God's weakness is stronger than the greatest of human strength. Remember, dear brothers and sisters, that few of you were wise in the world's eyes, or powerful, or wealthy when God called you. Instead, God chose things the world considers foolish in order to shame those who think they are wise. And he chose things that are powerless to shame those who are powerful." You know, one of the great preachers of the last 100 years or so is a guy, you may have heard of him. His name is Billy Graham. Billy Graham would hold huge crusades all over the world that were evangelistic in nature. He saw a broken and a hurting world that didn't know Jesus, and he went to 185 countries. He held 417 crusades on 6 continents. 3.2 million people were led to the Lord because of messages and sermons that he preached. He was a pastor to presidents, a friend of sinners, and a light to the world. But he didn't start out that way. That's not how he started. He wasn't Mr. Big Shot. He wasn't ready for the occasion. He didn't feel comfortable speaking in front of crowds. He didn't start out that way. You know, he was actually a Bible college dropout. Not once, but twice. At the first Bible school, the director of the college told him that if he kept going in the direction he was going, nothing special would ever happen to him. Can you imagine looking a great person in the eye and saying, "You're not going to amount to anything"? Have you ever felt that way? I know I have. I know I've had people that have spoken negativity over my life that didn't see the call of God over my life, or maybe they saw a little bit, but they didn't see the full spectrum of what I saw. And that happened to Billy Graham, where somebody said that to him. They said at most, "You're not going to amount to much. Maybe you'll be a small hick preacher in a little bitty country town, but that's all you're going to amount to." Then he went to another Bible school in Tampa Bay in Florida, and he fell in love with a pretty girl, and he dated her, courted her, proposed to her. They got engaged. But a few months later, they had a meeting, and she told him, "Billy, you're a nice guy, but I want to marry a man who's actually going to amount to something and do something great with his life." Once again, he had negativity pushed on him, and somebody else's limiting beliefs were put on him despite what he wanted to do. She's like, "I want to be with somebody that has a clear focus in life," and his whole world fell apart. That night, he walked over to a golf course, and he walked over to the 18th hole, and he went to the green, and he just fell to his knees. And he prayed, "All right, Lord, if you want me, you got me. I'll be who you want me to be. I'll do what you want me to do, and I'll go where you want me to go. Whatever you have for me, Lord, I'll do it." And he got up, he went about his night. Nothing changed on the outside, but something changed on the inside. And he started to practice to preach, and he didn't have these crowds lining up to see him. Not a lot of churches would invite him, and he would actually practice preaching to the swamps and the animals, and believe it or not, the alligator that was 50 yards away, just far enough to run from. And he would practice on the streets and around people that were walking by. He'd go to the streets, the trailer parks, the churches, and finally he ended up at his third college, Wheaton College near Chicago. And one night, one of the girls heard him praying in another room who he didn't see. And she thought to herself, "Now that man sounds like he knows who he's talking to. Sounds like he really knows God." That girl, her name is Ruth. She met Billy. They started dating. They were married for over 50 years. She saw the greatness in him. She saw the potential in him. See, God chooses insignificant people to do significant things. I'm reminded of Gideon in the book of the Bible in Judges chapter 6. An angel shows up to Gideon, and scholars believe it might have been Jesus showed up to Gideon, said, "Mighty hero, the Lord is with you." And Gideon replied, "Sir, if the Lord is with me, why has all of this happened to us? Why has all of this devastation happened here to the Israelites? The Lord's handed us to the Midianites." And then scripture says, then the Lord turned to him. And this wasn't just an angel, it was with Jesus. And Jesus said, go with the strength that you have. And then Gideon starts to talk about how he's from the lowest tribe. And not only is from the lowest tribe, he's from the lowest people. He's the least important person in the entire country. And yet God still calls him to do something great, something greater than he thought that he could do. And Jesus responds, I'll be with you, and you will destroy the Midianites as if you were fighting against one person. And Gideon goes out. He gets 32,000 people to join his army, to join the cause. And God speaks to him. He's like, you have too many men. He said, the ones who are afraid can go home. 10,000 people go home. Can you imagine? A third of the army was afraid. They go home. Then he says, hey, send them to that pond. The people that drink, put their head in the ground, or not in the ground, put their head in the water all the way, send them home. And the reason for that is this. If people just knelt down, but they got the water and cusped it with their hand, they could see the enemy coming. They weren't putting their back to the enemy. And all but 300 people were left. Only 300 people were ready to be used by God in the way that he wanted to be used. But that night, those 300 people overtook 120,000 of the opposing army. Why? You know, God isn't looking for the best and the brightest. He's not looking for the smartest. He's not looking for the most popular. He doesn't care if you have 243 followers on Instagram or 30 on TikTok. He doesn't matter to him. He sees what's in you, the design that he has for you, the purpose that he has for you. He has a great plan for you, despite what other people think. Despite what your inner narrative might lead you to believe, he has a great plan and a great calling for you. He chooses insignificant people to do significant things. Your weakness is not a limit when his strength is your capacity. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope it blessed you. I hope it inspired you, that it encouraged you. Just remember, you are not alone. We are a community, a church that's starting in Dallas, Fort Worth in just a few months, but we have an online community. If you'd like to join this community, just send us a DM. We'll send you. We're starting to work on online ways and online communities, small groups, because you don't have to do life alone. But we believe in you. We see the greatness in you. Thank you so much for joining. Make sure and share this episode. If it helped you, it'll help somebody else. And remember, we are champions not only in heaven, but champions in life. And let's maximize the life that God has given each and every one of us. Leave nothing on the table, because what we do in life echoes in eternity. We'll see you next time.